Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead now and connect Mongoose to our MongoDB database that we created, which you can see I have open right here in MLab. Now the string, which is this right here, which starts with MongoDB, we need to put this inside of its own file in our config. Okay, it's good practice. You don't want to just stick it right in your code. So what we'll do is create a new folder called config. And we're going to create in here a file called keys.js. And in this file, we're going to module.exports and set that to an object. And module.exports, it's just a way of making this object available outside of this file because we need to connect to it. So let's say Mongo URI and set that to our connection string. So it's going to be this here. I don't know why this isn't responsive, but we're going to paste that in, and then just make sure you replace your DB user with whatever you use for a user, and then make sure you replace the DB password with your password. I used Brad for both. So we'll go ahead and save that, and then for now we can close this. But later on when we deploy, we're going to have different key files for our development environment than we have for our production, because you may want to use a different database for development and a different one for production, and we'll get into that later. But for now, let's go back to our server.js and let's bring in Mongoose. So we'll say const mongoose equals require mongoose. And then we're going to go down, let's see, we're going to go right below where we initialized our app, and let's say db config, and we want to create a variable called db, and we want to require our keys file, which is in the config folder. So we'll say ./config/keys, and then we want the Mongo URI value, so we'll say dot, and you can see if you're using VS Code, it'll just pop up there, Mongo URI. Okay, so it's pertaining to this right here, whatever this value is. So that's our DB variable. Now we want to connect to Mongoose, or I'm sorry, connect to MongoDB through Mongoose. So we'll just say connect to MongoDB, and we do that by using Mongoose. So we'll say mongoose.connect and pass in that DB variable. Now we can use a promise here. We get a promise returned, which means that we need to use .then. I'm actually going to put these on separate lines. Let's go ahead and tab that over, and then we'll put this on its own line. So the .then is basically success. So if it connects successfully, I'm going to put an arrow function here and just do a console.log, and we'll just say MongoDB connected. Now if there's an error, if something goes wrong, then we want to do a .catch. This is how JavaScript promises work. And in here it'll give us an error, and then we just want to console.log that error. All right, so that's how we can connect to our database. So now let's save this, and now down here you can see MongoDB connected. If I were to go and change inside the keys files, change something like mess the password up, I'll put a 1 in here and save. Now you can see we get all of these errors, and it just says right here, Mongo error, authentication failed. That's coming from this error right here. Since it wasn't successful, it runs the .catch. Okay, we get the error, and then we're just logging it. So let's just change that back, and then it should just say MongoDB connected again. All right, so now we have at least our connection set up. So I think what we'll do is stop here, and in the next video we'll go ahead and we'll start to set up our routes for our API endpoints. Or I should say our route files, because we're going to have quite a few endpoints. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.